Between 1536 and 1542, the union with Wales was established, and in 1567 Crown James VI of Scotland becomes King of England and Ireland as James I, and then claims divine right to prevent Rome from recovering Britain. In 1626, Charles I dismisses Parliament. In 1628, Lord Coke's Petition of Right was reluctantly sealed by Charles I after he imposed martial law upon the people by royal decree, along with arbitrary taxes without consent and other harsh and cruel punishments. In 1629, Parliament passes 3 resolutions. They would condemn any move to change the established religion, they would condemn taxation levied without the authority of Parliament, and they declared that merchants paying illegal taxes betrayed the liberty of England. In 1640, Oliver Cromwell is elected to Parliament for the second time, and in 1641, a list of 204 points of objection was submitted in Parliament to object to the King and Church and all of their foreign, financial and legal and religious policies, and calling for a purge of officials, with Parliament having a veto over Crown appointments. This policy was aimed squarely at the Church of Rome. The Grand Remonstrance, as it was known, was passed by a relatively narrow margin of 159 votes to 148, and eventually led to the English Civil War. In 1642 we get the outbreak of civil war, and the bankers have firmly got their sights set on London. In 1646 Charles I surrenders. In 1649 the Rump Parliament gives itself the right to make laws without the King's approval. In 1649, Charles I is executed. The laws on usury can now be obscured and the bankers have London. In 1649, Parliament abolishes the monarchy, the realm out of the hands of the monarch into the hands of the illuminated. In 1649, Cromwell chairs the new English Commonwealth. In 1653, Oliver Cromwell is elected Lord Protector of the Commonwealth. And in 1658, Oliver Cromwell dies and appoints his son Richard as his successor. In 1659, Richard Cromwell resigns. In 1660, we get the Restoration, which is where General Monk marches to London, dissolves Parliament, and Charles II is invited to resume the throne, but as a puppet monarch. Now, if you remember, I said in 1649 the Rump Parliament gave itself the right to make laws without the King's approval. Parliament seemed to take full advantage of this fact in 1666 because behind closed doors, whilst the world outside was more concerned with surviving the Black Plague and the Great Fire of London, they took an act from 1540 which was passed by Henry VIII designed to recover the estates of people lost at sea, and then developed something called the Seta-Kevi Act, which has had a tremendous impact on all of us ever since, but more about that in a further video. In 1688, following centuries of religious, civil and foreign wars and the beheading of Charles I at the end of the English Civil War, James II was deposed for tyrannous crimes against the people, and the Declaration of Rights was sealed by the new King, William of Orange, along with the coronation oath. In 1689, the Declaration of Rights was transposed into the Bill of Rights 1689. The articles of which guaranteed the common law rights of every English subject, including freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, jury trials, and the right for Protestants to bear arms. In 1701, the Act of Settlement placed limits on the power of foreigners in government and on the power of the monarch in the respective parliament, as well as settling the succession of the throne on the Protestant line. In 1706, the Acts of Union 1706 and 1707 created the United Kingdom of Great Britain in breach of the Declaration of Arbroath. However, it also meant that all subjects in both countries enjoyed the rights, protections and benefits guaranteed by the British common law, whilst retaining separate and distinct legal systems. In 1801, the English occupied Ireland, which was unlawfully incorporated into the United Kingdom of Great Britain by way of the Act of Union 1801. By 1815, and the bankruptcy of the Crown and Bank of England by the Rothschilds for the first time, the Setakevi trusts of the United Kingdom became assets placed in private banks, effectively becoming private trusts or fidei-commissary trusts administered by commissioners or guardians. From 1835 and the Wills Act, these private trusts have been also considered secret trusts whose existence does not need to be divulged. In 1829, 9 principles of law enforcement were adopted by British and Commonwealth constabularies. In 1832, also 67 and 72, Reform Acts extended voting rights and established the secret ballot. In 1910, the Accession of Declaration Act confirmed the statutory requirement on the monarch to take the coronation oath. In 1911, there's the Parliament Act. This deprived the House of Lords the ability to veto legislation. In 1914, World War I and the culling of English and German men. In 1918, the Reform Act ended the property qualifications for men. This meant that women over 30 years of age could vote. In 1921, the Anglo-Irish Treaty was signed, removing 26 counties of Irish Free State. In 1928, with a shortage of men, the Reform Act gave equal voting rights to women. In 1933, Britain declares bankruptcy and signs off British people as collateral via the trust to the fund of the Bank for International Settlements. In 1936, a Treasonous Act takes place, where Edward VIII is removed, replaced with George VI, who then takes an unlawful and thus void coronation oath, giving him the levers of power without the duty to uphold the realm. In 1945, there is the introduction of the social security system to fix the trusts to a private enterprise, which then leads to 1948, the Parliament Act. The aim of this is to stop the House of Lords delaying the passage of legislation for longer than 12 months. Between 1972 and 2019, successive UK parliaments voted incrementally to cede British sovereignty to the European Union, formerly the Common Market, in various treaties and statutes, without the consent or knowledge of the British people, which is tantamount to high treason. The first and predominant of those statutes was the European Communities Act 1972. In 1972, Edward Heath signed the European Communities Common Market Act, knowingly and willfully deceiving and betraying the British people into European rule. This was an act of outright high treason, and his government thus became an unlawful assembly. Governments cannot bind successors. In 1992, John Major signed the Maastricht Treaty, knowingly and willfully stripping Her Majesty of her sovereignty and rendering her and her subjects mere citizens of Europe. His act was ultra vires and one of outright high treason. In 1998, Tony Blair committed treason by trying to override Magna Carta by introducing the Crime and Disorder Act of 1998. In February 2001, the Queen commits treason, signing away her sovereignty to the European Parliament. In 2008, Gordon Brown commits treason by rejecting a referendum on the European Reform Treaty. No government has the right to repeal the Magna Carta, as it was written before parliaments were ever formed. The Magna Carta of 1215 is a covenant signed by King John on the Isle of Runnymede, Article 61 of the Magna Carta is included in the original Magna Carta. In 1297, the Model Parliament confirmed Magna Carta in statute law. Much of this statute has since been repealed, yet while Parliament can repeal or amend any Act of Parliament or statute, Parliament was not party to the original common law contract of 1215 and cannot therefore amend or repeal it lawfully, and thus its original provisions remain intact, including Article 61. In 2020, a treacherous Parliament attempted to usurp British sovereignty by way of Section 38 of the EU Withdrawal Agreement Act 2020, whilst the Coronavirus Act 2020 treasonously purported to suspend the birthrights of the British people as guaranteed by the common law, which gave rise to the Magna Carta 2020 Declaration of Rights. So as you can see from this video, the last 500 years has been a period of treasonous acts where the British public have been let down badly by the people in whom they bestow their trust the most. For the next video in our series, we go back to 1666 to look at how the Setokivi Act and the Setokivi trusts have hijacked English law and the impact that that's had on all of us. If you have enjoyed the content of this video, you may wish to consider subscribing to the channel. You can do this free of charge by clicking on subscribe, click the bell for notifications for when further videos are uploaded, and then click on the thumbs up to show you liked it. And most importantly, consider sharing it with some of your crazy friends. Thank you so much for watching.